Yeah, but I still remember. Yeah, I thought Asante something, but essentially when I look into Google, it's just Asante. But by the way, thanks guys for once again attending my section this week. We just saw each other last week, so it's been short. Like just I mentioned, to win was like 1 week, and it is once again 1:30 in Singapore. So you hear my voice is a bit tipsy. That's understandable. So the session today is going to be like ngTemplate outlet, and I think let's get right into it. So when we talk about ngTemplate outlet, we will talking about a few more things to lead us to ngTemplate outlet, and one of that is ngTemplate. Not sure you're familiar with that, but the ngTemplate is going to look like that. Very simple. You have the P with hello on the first line, then there's a ngTemplate, which basically there's a P inside with the word, and then the last one is Angular Kenya. But you only see two things on the UI, right? You only see hello and Angular Kenya. You don't see the ngTemplate thing. Yeah, it's just hidden. And then there's a comment, there's a placeholder on the DOM. It's not necessarily very important, but yeah, we don't see the thing which is inside ngTemplate. And so the ngTemplate definition is basically the element is not going to be rendered by default. So that is a short definition of ngTemplate, and like, why do we need it, and how do we use it? I think the most common places you see ngTemplate is here, right? You use an directive like ngIf, and you say, okay, if there's something is finished loading, then you render now you see me. Okay. The tag is silly, but you get the idea. It could be a data from a server, right? That's likely the case. If it's still loading, then you want to say, okay, the template is loading. So you want to render this loading template. The naming here is what I usually use. I just template, TMPL. Maybe just me, right? You can do template explicit. You can just do loading, but you want to say that is a template. So you want to put something. So in this use case, when is loading is true, then you wanna see the loading. And the way ngIf works is it's a bit, interesting to look a bit like detail into. So as you can see here in the use case where I have this is loading is phone, which means the negate here is true. And then you know that if when the if is true, then you render the thing inside. So as you can see, now you see me is here, and then the template thing below, as previously, there's some comment on the DOM. It doesn't look exactly the same, right? There's maybe this template at the end is for ngTemplate, and then there's something here. But then that's some placeholder from Angular. But ngIf, right? You see that there is the asterisk, the star in ngIf, and then that's usually a lot of questions arise, like why do we need this star? Why sometimes you do this, square brackets and all. So the asterisk here is like a special syntax from Angular. So when it's kind of, when you use ngIf, okay, we see it in the next slide, but when you use ngIf as just the input, it is not going to be the same. So when you put the star, implicitly Angular just kind of putting an ngTemplate surrounding the element, something like that. So now you have an ngTemplate, and then you have an ngIf, and then could be ngIf else to kind of support for the use case of the else thing. But that is how explicitly it might look like. So the star was like, it is just gonna surrounding whatever you put inside with the ngTemplate. So look back into the previous slide. You can see that that's a P, ngIf, and inside there's a text. And explicitly, it's going to be that ngTemplate that wrap the whole P. Now you see me. So that's the idea. So you might see this thing before. um, if you didn't notice, the second one, there's only the star, right? It is very similar to the slide previously, but the slide previously we had ngTemplate and then the word. And then it's gonna render the same thing. It's once again, putting the whole p tag here inside an ngTemplate implicitly. Why do you need to use it? I mean, I don't usually use this thing, but now it's kind of you know how it's gonna like it's possible to have this kind of syntax to work. Okay, once again, that's how it's rendered on the DOM. But okay, go on to the next one. Yeah, that's how it is, right? That's the use case you wanted to use it. So you wanted to send a template to the parent, and then somehow you might be able to query it from the parent and render it or do something with it. So the shorter, the below is also working. It is just the syntactic sugar for the before. So here you have ngTemplate surrounding. Here you put the star, but basically you just do the same thing. Just put the ngTemplate and put the host inside the ngTemplate. So hopefully it's so far so good about ngTemplate. So the next part we look into is ngTemplateOutlet, and the last one is an use case for ngTemplateOutlet. This introduction I probably can skip, but yeah, basically I'm Trung, TGD in Angular. I do a few open source projects. I host Angular Singapore and Angular Vietnam. That's the photo from our community. And that's how the image from Singapore I showed you last week. And that's Ascenda. I've been with Ascenda for almost 2 years now. I think Gwen also know about Ascenda. You have a bit interesting story about Ascenda. And then, anyway, let's get into ngTemplateOutlet. So, we have an ngTemplate, and as we know, it's not going to be rendered by default. So, let's say you have this template confidential and you want to render. So that's where you wanted to use ngTemplateOutlet. Here it's just put into the div. I mean, this can apply to anything. But the interesting here is you see that the p tag, the content of the template, is appending, next to the div. So, intuitively, you might think the content of the ng template should be a child of the div, right? That's very intuitive. That's what I thought initially, but it's not. It's just a sibling. So the p is going to be the sibling of the div. That's the important takeaway. Or you can use something like ng container. So when you use ng container to render the template, that's how it looks like. So now you don't have the div, right? Before we have a div, now we don't have a div anymore. It just render the template itself. So that is very handy when you don't want to have an unnecessary extra tag. We can also look into it later, but you kind of know the idea, right? Sometimes you have a flex, and then below that you want the template itself immediately instead of having a div and then the template, because it might break. Because technically flex is still a row by default. Maybe it's very abstract, but ng container is gonna help resolving in a lot of use cases. And at the end, we get ngTemplate, and you can use ngTemplateOutlet. I never seen it really like until I read the Angular material source code. I didn't know that we can do it at all. Like, I don't know that you can use ngTemplate to render the template using template which is so mind-blowing. Right? ngTemplate is supposedly not to render anything, and you can still apply an ngTemplateOutlet to render another template. Think about it. It's just it's just mind-blowing. Anyway, but yeah, that's coming from Angular material source code, and that's why I know it's possible. But the most common is ng container. The div, yeah, a bit lesser, but ng container I think is probably the most popular. So I couldn't refine the short and concise definition for ngTemplateOutlet, but basically it's just a directive to allow you to render a template dynamically, and it is used to reuse or override the template. So there's two parts, right? There's a reuse and override. Reuse is pretty simple, right? You define a template and you can use it in multiple places. But override, what does it mean? So, like we just mentioned, any template can be reused, which is like, okay, look into this. That is a material source code I just mentioned. So here it has an ng template radio, and then they use the same template in two different places with a different container. As you can see here, this span, but it has different classes and it has different ngIf. So there's certain thing need to be repetitive, and you don't want to create a new component, right? This just be a part of the component. You want certain thing render in a different condition, so that you just define a template and then say, okay, if this thing and I render it, if the other thing I render this other container and also this template. That is quite a popular use cases. And once again, is it using ngTemplate to render a template? Very interesting. But the more the more of the overriding is what make ngTemplate so much more interesting to work on. So as you can see here, it's very simple. I have a template called grid, and inside that's hello. It's trivial. You never really need to do this at all. But just here is the kind of an example. So bear with me. So let's say I have a template. I call it front. It's basically to say I want to um, display something in front, and then it take in a string. Let's str. So this str, right? The thing after the less with the hyphen str, you can use it within the template itself. So here I define a str, so I can use it. You can do let name, let whatever, right? Just the thing here, the str, you can use it here. So you can have multiple variable. Let's just call it the variable of context. And then when you use it, first of all, right, you can still use, you can pass in the name or this is a template reference. It's not really a name, it's like a reference. And then you can additionally passing a context. So that's what makes the overriding happen. So here, because I has the str I assigned to a name, so that's why I need to repeat the name here. Like I need to pass an object with a key that match with the right side of the last syntax. Let's put it this way. So name need to be matching. So I know it's a bit of thing going on, but pretty simple. You need to define something You need to define the thing. And then on the right side, if you give it a name, then you pass it in the context. Hope it's intuitive. Sometimes you see that you don't really need a right side. Let's say you just do a let name and you don't do equal to something. So as usual, you can still use a name here, right? But when you pass it, when you pass the context, so now because the name, you don't really pass anything on the right side. So it is becoming, you need to pass something. It is called $sign implicit. So yeah, if you don't have the right, right side of the equal, so you do let name equal to name, then here's still a name, right? Name. If you do a name equal to name, but because you don't have anything, you just don't have let name equal to something, so you need to use implicit. So in a lot of use case, you can use implicit if you only has one thing, but you have more. You have name, you have age, you have address, and you want to have three separate things, then you pass three different things, but three different let variable. Hope it's understandable so far. Then we move on. So from this, right? If you never really work with ngTemplateOutlet, the syntax might look a bit overwhelming, but in the end, you need a template variable that refer to a template itself, and then you can pass an additional context. So now we look into how it is useful in one of the most common example using ngTemplateOutlet, which is a table, right? So here I have a very simple example. I have a movie table, okay? It just has an ID, the title, there's rating, year, and then I just render it using ngFor. I kind of have a product table. It's render a different thing because product object is essentially a different data. So for sure, we need to look into a bit of the code on the right side. So let's say I have this movie table. Let me just scroll a bit slowly. So again, very simple. There's some heading, and then there's some, data. I just scroll to the table example. So here you can see it's rendered as expecting, nothing crazy. Then the product table, the same thing, has something, and then I render, the data of each product. The data look like that. There's product, there is ID, name, brand, color, something more. There's a Boolean as well. Movie, there's gonna be ID, title, year, and rating, and then some, director, year, whatever. You got the idea. It's just the object of something, and we want to render it as a table. So these two tables look okay. And suddenly, that's not how we want the table that we wanted to ship to the user. It's just, default. So we say, let add in a bit of styling. So I prepare the style. So I just uncomment it. Save. And I uncomment the style for the product. Save. So you can see now, okay, there's a, the header now is green, and then the color is white, and then there's a like stripe, different color for odd and even row. Look okay, right? So in a lot of use cases, that's when you think about, oh, actually now maybe, let's say you have 10 table in your application, you might think, okay, maybe we want to have a generic table component because it's sharing the data anyway. The layout look the same, the style look like the same, and the code, pretty much the same. So if you have a generic table component, you encapsulate the style, you somehow encapsulate this kind of rendering, then the next time you use it, you just need to use one line of code to render a table. How cool is that? So let's say I build this generic table, and then that's how it looks like in the end. where's the generic table? See, let's say this one. I just had the generic table. I pass in the data. Essentially, that's an array. And then I had something like column. So I just had one line of code, not a component, right? And then it still render the same table. Why not, right? It's quite intuitive, and we want to be a good engineer. We want to have a reusable component. So why not? So let's look into this generic table and see how it's been implemented. It's not a lot different from the product and the movie table. So let me comment a few stuff. I just try something. So here we got the generic table. Okay. Then the style, that's the thing, the same thing. We don't really care about this. Fine. Then here, I introduce something, I call it a column array. So let's look into the the component first. The component first is take an array of something. This can be a T, right? Here I just put any to be simplified, but basically it means you can pass any shape of object and it's gonna work. There's the way to make it strongly typed, but for this scope of the demo today, we just take any, and then there's a column, and inside the column, there's just two things. There's a field and there's a header. Um, so to make you understand, let's say I have this movie array, and then I have this ID property, but when I render the ID property, I want the header to be, movie ID. I don't want just the ID. And I want the ID to be, on cap, or, you might want to have a different display for the header. So that's why in the column, you have the field, which is, an, to be an ID. And then the header is something like movie ID. I hope it's intuitive. And if you look into the way we, pass in the data again into main again, so you can see I want to render the ID, the title, the rating, and the year. So this field is gonna match with the object property of the movie itself. Then the header here is just a text, right? I want to render is on the top. So go back to the generic table. How do we render the header? So very simple. The header, you just go to the list of, the array of column, and you just show the header. There's 4 things, you render 4 header. For the body, so let's say you have an array of movies. So the row here, each row is going to be 1 movie. And then for each the movie, you go through an array of column. So if you still remember, array of column, that's 4 elements. So that's why we can render 4 data for each movie into the UI. So the way is just, you take the column field. So, for the first one is going to be ID. So it's going to be like movie ID. The next one is movie dot title. Next one is movie rating. The next one is going to be movie years. So hope you guys can still follow. That's nothing really crazy about this code. So it's kind of working for sure, right? In the end, the code for generic table component is not a lot. You just skip all of the comment. The comment here is just for me to do a demo, but the code in reality is like that. It's quite short. And then when you use it, it's quite simple to use. Outside of the component, it's going to be just one line of code. F generic table. You send the same array, but now you just send an additional column, like configuration, what you want to render. And having a generic table is good because a table usually come with a lot of additional functionality. So let's say you the table, there's the data is loading, you want to render loading. And if you want to render consistently for all of the table, you want to encapsulate it inside a component. Then maybe there's no data, you want to render a no result. You might want to add in the search box and maybe just client side. And then you might drag and drop the table. So all of this functionality, it makes sense to have a generic table component. But yeah, of course, we come a long way to say the but. What's this? Okay, this one is just the generic table we just talked about. But let's go back to the code. So now let's say the interesting thing here is, this is not still a very, realistic table. Like the table could be very complicated. And I hope this makes sense. So let's say I don't want to render this rating as just a number. It's just here, it's just number. It's just not that clear. So now I say I want a rating star component. So you see immediately you can see there's 4-star, then below there's 3-star, then could be like 2-star and 1-star. It affecting it is more visualized. And I do rating divided by 2 because movie rating is in scale of 10 and we only have 5-star. But this is a tiny detail. You might have a number and you wanted to format it. So it might not just years. It could be the box office and you want to format as a number. Because the format, the number coming from JavaScript is going to be just a big number. Let's say you have this big number and you want to format this look nicely, right? Or you have a date and you want to format the date. So the point here is like you might want different thing for each cell. You might have a number, you might have a boolean, and you render it as yes or no instead of just true and false for sure. And you might want to format the date, you might want to formatting the number, and you might want to have some kind of event handler. Let's say there's something you had the rating, you might want to click and rate it. So suddenly when you look into let's say you will have this movie component, it is just so much easier because you control everything. But if you need to introduce it into a generic table, it just makes things so much more complicated. So let's say I introduce a new type for column. So now I know that's going to be a rating, the text, the date, or a number. Let's say there could be a lot more. And now we can do an ng4 again. I think it's still gonna work. So maybe let's just comment this thing out. So it's gonna probably still gonna work. You don't see the star yet because on the column definition we haven't set the value. But okay, maybe let me just say put it somehow it's easier to see. Let me close it. So here I just go through the column definition again, and now you need to check for each column type. And if it's the column type is rating, then you just do a rating, and then you can immediately see something was kind of weird. Like here, right? You need originally we need to divide it by 2, but here to make it generic, we don't want to divide it by 2. For example, so let me just add in. Let's say go back to the column, and I just put in the type, and now it's rating. See, so now it has the star, but because the star here, like I just mentioned, we want to make it generic, so we don't want to divide it by 2. So whatever you put divided by 2 here, then what happened if the star rating now, the number for the rating of the other object is going to be in the scale of 5. So it's not going to be generic again. You might need to do some transformation, whatever. But the idea here is like, okay, you suddenly see a lot of complexity arrays in this generic table component. Plus, if, let's say you have so many, you have a date, you have a number format, you have so on and so forth. You might have a small chart, right? So the problem is like, okay, you don't use a star rating component in a table, but then you still need the whole thing. You need the table component, generic table component, including all of the other components that you might not use at all. Plus the complexity of having a very smart component that do everything for you. So there's two problems. You need to have no. Now you have a very complicated component. The second one, you might import unnecessary component that you don't need to. So how do you solve it? Let me just comment it again, and then just uncomment this thing again. So to solve it, I think that's now where we start to look into the way we can utilizing ngTemplateOutlet. So, let's assume that all of the share functionality, all of this we still have. Loading template, no result, the search box, drag and drop everything here. You still have inside the component itself. But, only the template for each row, somehow you can tell, when you use it. So let's say when you use a movie table, you are able to tell the generic table component that I want to use it template for my table, for each row. Same for product, same for student, same for other. Actually, for some reason, I cannot clear this. So let me, okay, just like, usually there's a shortcut, but for somehow it doesn't work. This, and then, clear, X. I think it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of collapsing with PowerPoint, so I cannot just clear. Anyway, sorry for the distraction. But the point I wanted to make is like, let's say we still has the generic table component with encapsulate enough share functionality, including the style. But when you use it, you are able to tell the component to accept a template for each row, for example. That is going to be super cool. And that's what we want to do with ngTemplateOutlet. And I just want to show you now. So this is the generic table component using outlet. Let me just close it. Okay, I put the style outside so it looks shorter. The column here actually that is not necessary anymore. Let me just save it. And then now let's just look into the code for a while. I think that's important. So as you can see here in the new generic table component, now we just render two things. First of all, we render the header, which is a template. Okay, how it's gonna use you kind of, it's gonna click soon. But for now, the header, we are able to send it from outside of the component. And the same for the row. So you have the row template, and inside the component, the generic component, it doesn't know anything about row. It just know it is a template coming from outside. And then when it is trying to render each row, it is gonna give it context. So let's assume when you go over the array of movie, and then I say, okay, I had the template, and then now I want to, let the template to access to the object using this row variable. So I just, pass it there as a ngTemplate contact. So as you can see here, header is the content child. There's different way to do it. We can do an input. Um, I can show you the input look like, but for now, just do content child. Probably is easier. Then another content child is row. So content child is like when you're using the component and you have something in between the component. And then you have a, let's say there's a template reference. You are able to query it. So let's look into how it's going to be used. I think it's going to be easier. So here, that's how I'm going to use it. So it is like app generic table outlet. I still, send the data as an array of something. Here is an array of movie. And then the header is my template, right? I know that I want 4 things. So I just send 4th instead of sending a column definition. Here I am actually sending HTML into the component so that it can render. So that is a header, and you can see that's a header template reference. And then that is, that is the hash header. That's why you can query it using the header, string here. Then the next one has a row. So I just say ngTemplate, and then I just give it a row. For sure, there's different way to make it, strongly typed, and you don't really need to specify the name. Maybe you just forgot to do a row. It might be break, but there's the different way to do it. In this example, just say I want to query this template row, and then I has a variable named row. Okay, so row here can be anything, but the row here, okay, let's say I just call it something like data. So that is easier for you. So I just say data, because calling row is kind of confusing. But data here is kind of, clashing with data outside. Okay. What's the name again? Okay, let's just keep a row. But the point here is that this two is not the same. This two data and this like row and row, like we have 3 row here, but they are not exactly the same. We can just call, okay, let's say in this example, I just say I want to have a movie. Yeah, let's say just call it a bit more explicit, a movie here. So here, right, I need to say here, this need to be a movie. Simple like that. So let me just put it side by side, close it. I put this thing side by side, as you can see. So you can see that. I hope you still understand. I hope you still can be, follow along. It's quite a lot of things going on. But the idea here is like you have a template and you are gonna give it to the component when you want to use it. But the interesting thing here is like when the component is gonna render it, it is gonna pass a certain data into the template so that you can use, right? So from the outside, you don't know what movie you're gonna be able to access. This movie is gonna passing to you from the inside when you go through the ng form. So just to recap, here there's a ngTemplate row that is corresponding to this template row here. And then there's a movie. right? There's a movie. The movie is corresponding to the movie here. And then, oh, actually, it's not this movie. That's movie, right? The right side. And then this movie on the left side of the LED, you can use it inside, yeah, of the template. So now you have it, right? So now you have the ability to give a template to a component, and then the component is gonna, you know, give a certain context to the template itself. So it's kind of a bit, the way you're thinking of it is a bit reverse, right? You don't just give the template and it comes with some certain data. You you say, okay, I have a template, I have a placeholder data, and when the component is render the template, it is gonna give me that placeholder data so that I can be able to render it. So here suddenly, let me just comment all of the other table. Actually, let's just do it one by one. See, then close it. Just keep one. And then now you see that we still have the same movie table component. But let's say I want to do this rating, right? I want to do this rating. So now what I'm gonna do is just go here and then I just say, okay, first of all, if I don't have this, app rating, movie rating, I think I don't have it. So I need to import it first. Star rating. So I import the star rating component. And then here I just use it. I mean, Stack Blade today just doesn't have this suggestion, but it's gonna be like, movie dot rating divided by 2. So there you have it. In this way, right? When I need to use F star rating, I just use it as I am control of the, movie table component that I have. But I still have the benefit of having a lot of shared functionality encapsulating inside the table template outlet. Okay. Question? Is it? Okay, sorry. I heard some noise, or there's some question. But yeah, just to highlight that I still have the component that's control all of the share functionality, but at the same time, I am very flexible on providing the own templates so that the the parent component, the share component, the generic component, it is not taking care of the rendering of each cell and each row. It's just having a ngTemplate outlet giving a context of a row when it's rendering, and then from outside we can do what we want. So let's say you want to have, let's say you have a box, office. I just this is gonna be fail, but let's say you office, and you do this number template format, and then you pass in the data you want. I forgot that's the syntax, is it? Oh, something like that, and it still work. And this thing is only applicable for the movie table. If you want to do something else for the product table, feel free to do so, because now the generic table is not, it doesn't really care about that, and you are you know um allowed to do what you want with each template. So I hope it's been easy so far to understand. I know that's a lot of code. The link to the demo I'm gonna share with you guys. But I think that's the idea of the ngTemplate outlet, where you are able to send a piece of template, and then inside the component, when it is seeing the template, they can still pass in the context, and we can still render it. We can still control it from outside. I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. So the takeaway from this talk is like the ngTemplate is gonna define a template that is not gonna render by default, and then ngTemplateOutlet is the directive that allow you to render a template dynamically with the context as well if you want to. And the context part is what make ngTemplateOutlets powerful. Before we left, I just mentioned before, right? Let's say here, I can, let's say go back into the code. You might need to digest it a little bit further. Let's say I don't want to use content child. I should say input and say another input. So now I don't really need to put a name. Right. So it still work, but as you can see now, yeah, for sure it's broken because it doesn't have anything. So here in the code of before, implicitly you can use content child to query for that header and query for that row. But now we do input, so you can pass it in. Okay, sorry, it just doesn't give the suggestion. So when you pass in the header, right, it's already rendered here. And now I just pass in the row. So it's rendered the same thing. So there's different way to kind of provide this template. You can use input, but the most convenient is using content child. Sometimes you can also apply a directive to template. I think so. That's what I saw from material. You might see that it's like my dev header something like, yeah, forgot. So when you do this way, you got a suggestion for the you get a suggestion for the template, and you don't when you do this not def, let's say you don't even need this ng template now. You just say ng container, for example, because like we mentioned before, this star is going to implicitly make this thing, the content inside, as the ng template for you. So that's why when you look into a material source code or material uses, that's how it's look like. But that's a different implementation. It's gonna make things strongly typed. It's not easy to break. Here, let's say I just say do, it's gonna break, for example, or row once. Now it's be able to tell like, okay, this is not the valid input, but early day, I don't think it is possible. So I hope you get the idea. So yeah, I think hopefully that's ngTemplateOutlet. And you got some interesting insight from it. That's the slide, still the same link. That's still the same way of saying thank you. And now I know Asante. Asante. So once again, thank you for listening. Thanks for joining the my section today. And let me know if you have any question.
Hello, hi. I really enjoyed this session. I think everyone here really enjoyed the session as well. So I'll open the floor for questions. If you have any question, I think Trang is open to any kind of question that you might have. Please just feel free to unmute yourself or give any comments or compliment the session. That would be so amazing. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy.
Hello, everyone. I'm David from Nigeria.
Hi, David.
Thank you for this session. Yeah, this is a very, very amazing session. I really learned a lot. Although, recently from my work, I got to use this this technique, this ngTemplate outlet, and what it offers to work on a particular feature that I was assigned to do. And it was definitely like it was a table, but different tables, but they have different data that they work on, and then they also have different structures as well. So basically, what we did was exactly what I did. And the day I got to know about this feature in Angular, that day I was so happy because before I got that task, before I got this feature, I was thinking I was going to like duplicate the code for all the tables. But after discovering this feature, I knew that I could just like have a generic table, then just pass data into it to like make it work properly. So I thank you for this session. You even made this thing very, very much clearer now. And I really appreciate you for that.
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. You found it helpful. Yeah, I mean, I got the same issue before when I worked with Angular. So most of us when we started, yeah, I don't know. I started with this the original generic table. This that's what I was starting with. That's yeah, and it's becoming complete. Yeah, it's getting the complexity very quickly, very fast. You are building so many table. So after knowing yeah, this templating, then the line was a bit easier. Actually, a lot easier. But then actually it's been a long time I don't work with Angular, so so now I have the different technique when handling table.
Okay, David, thank you for that. Does anyone else have something to say or ask? I think Trang from the previous session said that you are open to ask any kind of question. Is that true, Trang? Even though it's
If you
different
stop
from
the
the
recording, yeah, I mean, if you stop the recording, then you can ask any question. Joyce.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Or you can cut it before we, upload to YouTube.
Okay, sounds good. But if you have any question on the topic or a comment, please just feel free to unmute yourself. I feel like Wayne has something to say.
I am all good. I think it was a well created talk, and it really touched on some things that not necessarily overlooked, but underutilized. It's something that is mostly underutilized, and when we get to have a glimpse at how to use some of these features in Angular, it really helps in making sure that we write proper code as software engineers.
Thank you for that, Wayne.
Hello, good. I have a question. Good evening, good morning. I don't know the time zone. Yeah, I'm not sure if you covered this, but I would like to ask, is it possible to pass a component via the ng template, or you can only pass data?
Oh, passing a component, actually, I'll never try. I mean, technically you can for sure. So, but the way Angular render the component is very different from any other framework. So let's say, okay, actually, I need to fix this first. Just let me refresh this. Technically, you can, yes. So let's say here, right? The raw data here. Let's say you want to have something else. Let's say I just wanted to say this. So now I want to say, okay. Actually, how do I do it? Interesting. I still feel it's possible, but it's like how, like, let's say there's a component. And then there's a component. Okay, let's just assume this way, right? And then you wanted to render it somehow. Let's just you know, it's not gonna work. But the way you pass it in from the inside could be this component. And now, okay, let's say I have this star rating. I just don't have anything else. I need to do this here. Okay, sorry. Star rating. Import. Okay. So I can do it this way. I can kind of pass in the, classes for a component, but the way to render it from the outside, it cannot be just very simple like that. It need to be something a bit more sophisticated. So you need to take this and then you, when do you remember how do we do it? I should forgot. Like, can we do it? No, maybe not. So it's like you need to resolve the component. I don't think you can use the ng. Let's see. Not gonna work like that. Not sure you've seen it before. There's ng component outlet component, but I don't think it's gonna work like that. The component here need to be something you can import, but here you just has a class. So yes, essentially, technically to say, you are able to pass in a component, not really a component. You can pass in a class that represent a component, and then, in the process, you will be able to resolve the render dynamic, something like that. I hope it's what I still remember correctly. Uh, something like that, right? So you, sorry, resolve. It's not a, eh? So you has a type, and you need to do all of this. You need to be able to do this, view container reference, and you try to create one, and then, yeah, it's a bit more tricky than that. But in short, technically you can. David, you have any input regarding passing a component? Feel free. But that's what I thought. So you kind of, in short, you be able to pass in something like this, a class, and you might be able to, you might find a way to kind of resolve it, and then, render it using a different technique. I hope it answered the question. Maybe it's just too deep, but
Winnie, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it gives an idea of how I can start solving my problem. If is it possible if you can share the article that you are showing us?
sure. I mean, it's of course, like, how do I share it? You mean this or the site blade?
The other than the render dynamic component, the dev.2 article.
Oh, this thing. Sure. You can look for it online. How do I send it here? Let me see. Gallery speaker. Sorry, it's been a long time I don't use Team, so. Okay, I'll just send it to Joy, and then.
Yes, we'll listen to the recordings as we post it on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. I'll just send it to you. But yeah, the
Okay.
idea of rendering the component dynamically in Angular is a bit trickier than comparing to like React and stuff.
Okay. Anyone else with a question?
Hello everyone, I have a question. I'm King from Vietnam, and I just have a question for anh Trung that beside the example that you give in the presentation that we can use ngTemplate outlet to custom the table, do you use this technique quite quickly for different feature in the different project? Can you give another example for that?
Thanks, Kang, for the example. For the question, sorry. Let me think. I did for sure. I did, but like I mentioned, it's it was like what? Maybe more than a year. I don't work with Angular now, so it just doesn't instantly come out from my mind. um, Let me see. Like ah, the 100 day. I think 100 day they had something. Okay. Okay, let's check. Angular. Sorry, so many things. But let's say let me go into template outlet. Let me see what I wrote long time ago. I think we did the card. Really? Do we? Yeah, the button. I think I did use it before, so you kind of be able to customize it. But other than that, it's been a long time didn't work with Angular. So you can send me a message on Messenger or LinkedIn. I'll try to look it up.
Yep. And another question is that because for me that I joined into the Angular quite late, I think for the version 9 or 10, so it is so hard for someone like me that we joined into the Angular so late like this. So a lot of concept, a lot of things that I need to learn. But for the Angular documentation, it just mentions something not very deep about how does it work under the hood. So can
Mm.
you say a little bit about the journey that you research the Angular subclass, or how do you research that you can understand deeply about Angular like this?
Thank Kang. I don't really like I mentioned last time. I didn't really read like every single thing on the source code, right? That's just too much. But usually you wanted to understand like ng-for and ng-if, for example. So that's where you can look it up online. Other than that, I tend to look into Angular if. Not sure if it's still a thing. It's been a long time. I think they still write something. Uh, been reading here a lot in the past, not now. um, and this guy, Max, he has a lot of in-diff. Probably you've seen him before.
Yep.
So yeah, I think so. In short, right, the journey in Angular is like you start building thing. You know how to use ngIf, ng-for. You know how to use dependency injection, and then after a couple of years, likely that's how the natural progress. You wanted to understand like, oh, actually like why this ngIf and ng-for is working this way. So you start to look into the source code. I think it's more like coming from your, uh, desire to understand it further. So you start to look into the source code, and then you read a little bit more. Other than that, for sure, watching YouTube video is good, but that's just come naturally. Or you have someone who can talk to in Angular. I mean, I was lucky because I have other people like Joe and Tiff to talk about some deep stuff, and we all look into the source code together. But alone, yeah, sometimes I was just too lazy. The other guys sometimes they share the pull request from the Angular repo, so I will look into, but I don't go through them and just read them. So I need to see it somewhere, and then I go in and read it. So that's the idea. You might need to find your tribe. so that you can start to look into it a bit more.
Yes, thank you, Trung. And the last one is that can you do me a favor that you accept my Facebook request?
And you need to send me a message.
Yeah. Yeah, okay, I will send you a message.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Kang. Thanks, Kang.
Thank you. Is there anyone else with a question or a comment? Okay, then I guess we'll close the session. Trang, thank you so much. You are now a friend of the community. We hope to see you soon in Kenya.
I'll try.